Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ned. I am a technical evangelist here at Caspio, and today I'm going to talk to you about Caspio's visual tools for rapid application development and its importance in the way a lot of businesses operate today. But first, let's take a look at the agenda, what we have for today's webinar. Initially, we'll go through a brief user interface tour to get you acquainted with how to navigate inside the platform and how to get started with an online database. We will learn how easy it is to develop applications inside Caspio's point-and-click and drag-and-drop tools. Later, we will learn how to define application logic using our triggers feature. We'll also talk about how, by using the Caspio seamless deployment, you can quickly and easily establish a web presence. And lastly, we'll save about 10 or 15 minutes at the end to answer any question you might have. So feel free to submit your questions using the chat window, and our team or myself will get to them either throughout the webinar or at the very end. Now, I'd like to point out that when Caspio was initially founded in 2000, it was founded and recognized as a rapid application development platform. Today, in the industry, RAD is known as a low-code platform. Now, keep in mind that most applications that you develop inside Caspio don't require any coding. But if you do plan on developing more sophisticated and robust solutions, then some coding may still be needed. Caspio was also named as a leader in Forrester's new Wave report for low-code platforms, which is great because it really shows how business users who may not have any technical acumen are able to change the way the department or business operates. And in the case of just one of our customers, Site Rocket Labs, who specialize in developing healthcare applications, they were able to develop a case management application and make it available not only for the computer browser, but also to have a mobile presence as well. That's very powerful to be able to quickly log in and make updates, even if you're somewhere else in the world. Now, Site Rocket Labs also did a comparison between Caspio versus traditional development, and they quickly realized that from the discovery and planning stage of an app all the way until completing the app, they were able to cut down on development time by 60%. Now, those are huge savings. And in today's webinar, you will see how companies and business users are able to cut down on development time, all thanks to Caspio's easy-to-use platform. Now, some of the resources that can help you along the way as you're thinking about what you can create inside Caspio will be to simply just set up a 14-day trial account. Talk to our team to get some free project consultations. We also have tons of videos and articles available both inside our knowledge base and our YouTube channel. So now what I'd like to do is give you a quick tour of the Caspio user interface, and then we're going to learn how to build applications. So here I am logged inside my account, and the first time you log into your Caspio account, you're always going to be taken to the home page. And on the home page, you're going to see a list of all the applications that you have created as long as you have had your Caspio account. Now, looking at my account here, I have 5 applications developed, and I put together a very simple application for us today called Sales CRM Workflow. And as soon as you open up an application, by default, you're going to be taken to the Overview tab. Now, this screen that you're looking at is mostly informational for you to keep track of your progress and perhaps add some notes as you're developing your application. We also give you some metrics here that pertain to your application, so depending on how much data you have in the app, you may be able to see the number of records inside that application. You can also add notes and make a few adjustments to your application details, along with adding some application parameters. Underneath the overview screen, we have something that's called data pages. And here's where you're going to be able to design all of your web forms, all of your reports, charts, calendars, all the application interfaces that your end users, your customers, or your stakeholders will be able to interact with. And as you can see, I have put together 6 different data pages consisting of 1 submission form, and I also have 5 different reports that have some charts. If I would like to see what this form looks like inside Caspio, I can quickly click on Preview, and that's going to show me my submission form. Now, this form here has a couple of fields. I can also access my dropdown, and based on my selection, you can also see some dynamic logic or effect that as you select an option in the dropdown, you can show and hide elements throughout the form. And we're going to be learning how to do that in today's webinar. It's actually very easy to do so using our point-and-click platform. Underneath data pages, we have tables. Now, tables inside your account, tables are the foundation of any application that you build. That's where all the data is going to reside. And if I just open up my leads table here, you will open up the data sheet mode, and here you can click on each cell to make modifications. Much like the Excel file, your spreadsheet offline that you're using, same thing in an online environment, you can click on those cells to make changes. And for those of you who have dealt with Excel spreadsheets in the past, you can probably relate to this. If you had to email that Excel file to somebody for them to make updates, and then you have to wait there for an hour to get an update back. And finally, there's that one person who compiles all the data together. Wouldn't it be nice if you had one centralized environment where multiple people can log in simultaneously to help you build these applications and to also view and edit the data in real time? So that is the power behind an online database. One place, a lot of people can log in and make updates in real time. This way you're not sitting at your computer and going home at midnight waiting for those Excel files to come back. And we also have email notifications that when somebody makes an update, you get an email notification to let you know. If you'd like to make some adjustments to your fields, you can click on Table Design, and here you can rename the field to something else, or you can introduce a new field to your table. Underneath tables, we have something that's called views. Now, views are considered virtual tables. Views allow you to filter information from the table, and views also allow you to merge tables together. So if you have common values between two or more tables, you can merge them together, and then you can establish relationships. Underneath views, we have the authentications object, and here's where you can create a login screen. So if you ever go to a website and you see that email, password, and a login button combination, that's exactly where you're going to be designing underneath the authentications object. Connections allow you to log into an application using social media. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen this nowadays. If you go to a website, you don't want to provide your own information. You quickly just want to log in using your Facebook account or your Gmail account. So that's what you can do underneath this object here. Styles allow you to change aesthetics, the look and feel of your form. So for example, if you want to update the color of the label, or if you want to change the color of the field, you can use our WYSIWYG system here to change those colors. And lastly, we have the localizations tab. And this tab deals with regional settings. So for example, if you wanted to change the language of the form, let's say from English to German, if you have a German-speaking audience who needs to look at the form, you can change the language, deploy the form, and now that audience can understand what the form says. You can also change the format of the date along with some other elements in the localization. So for example, here in the US, we have a format of month, day, and then year, whereas in Europe, they have day, month, and year. So you can change the formatting here under the Localizations tab. In this use case that I developed for today's webinar, I have already deployed each one of these data pages to my website. Now, we'll talk about deployment in a couple of minutes, but just note that when you click on Deploy here, you can grab some code and paste that code into your website to embed these data pages. And if you look at my live example, here is my add lead form that I created inside Caspio, and I have deployed it and embedded that form into my website. And once I start filling out the form, I can click submit, and all this data will be stored in my Caspio table. So now let's learn how we can actually begin building our own application. So let's go back out to the home screen. And you're probably wondering, well, how do I begin building an application in Caspio? It's my first time using the platform. Where do I even begin? And it's really easy to begin building an application. All you need to do is click on this link, New App. And you're going to have two options on how you can begin. You can start by importing data from an external source. So if you have some data in your Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file, or let's say you have an Access database or an XML file, you can bring all of your data into Caspio right away. Or you can begin building your application from scratch. So let's do that. And let's give our application a name. Okay, so I'm just going to simply call this application's Sales CRM. Click on Finish. And you will be able to see that application now listed with all the other applications. Next step is to click on Open. And once again, as I said earlier, when you open up an application, you're always going to be taken to the Overview tab first. And here we even give you some tips on how you can begin building your application. The very first thing that you want to build inside your app is always going to be the table. So that's why you see this very first tip that your application doesn't have any tables. Go ahead and create a new table first. A good rule of thumb here to remember is you really should have at least one table created before you can do anything else with the other objects. So let's go ahead and create our table. That's going to take me inside my tables object, and let's create our very first table. Now in this table, I would like to capture lead information. So as I submit the form to enter in my lead, I want to store that information in this database table. So let's add our fields. I'm going to have lead ID, and I'm going to change the data type to a random ID so that I can automatically assign a unique ID to each one of my leads. Let's also have a field called lead status. Now the reason why I add this field to my table, if you look at my form that's live, here's my field called lead status, and I can quickly select from this dropdown a status for that lead. This is why in my table I want to capture that information. Underneath lead status, let's have deal size. Now when you're dealing with numerical data, for example revenue or forecast or pipeline, you may want to consider changing your data type to something that's called currency, because this is going to accept dollar values. Underneath deal size, let's have DQ reason. Now for those of you who have worked in the sales department or understand the sales methodology, if you're entering a lead, and let's say this lead doesn't have any potential of closing, you want to change the lead to disqualified, but you also want to list the reason why you disqualified that lead. That's very useful when you're running metrics, so you can change the way your business operates. If it's too expensive, the customer doesn't have the budget, or the customer is unreachable for whatever reason. That's the idea behind the DQ reason field. Let's collect the name of the lead. How about title? Maybe phone number. Let's also have email. And typically you will see something like preferred contact method. Let's also have a comments section. Now when you're adding comments, usually you want to associate that with text 64,000 data types so you can add more characters and capture more data into that field. Because if you leave it as text 255, your comments will never be able to exceed 255 characters. That's why text 64,000 is so useful. And last but not least, let's have date created. And for this field, I'm going to change the data type to date time. Always useful to have a date field in the table, because if you create a workflow and you want to know which employee made an update or which employee added something new to the table, you want to be able to track these dates so that you know as the administrator when something was updated or when something was added into the database. Once you're done, simply just click on Save and give your table a name. I'm going to call it TBL Sales Leads. Hit Finish. And this is going to save my changes and also create my very first table. Now when you open the table now, you're going to see how we don't have any data. It's an empty table. Why? Because we just created this table from scratch, so there should be no data inside it. I'm going to very quickly create two additional tables, and they're going to be very simple lookup tables. One table that's going to contain my lead status, and the other table is going to contain my disqualification reasons. So let's have one field here, lead status. I'm going to save my table now and call it TBL status lookup. So there's my second table, but inside this table, I'm going to add my options. So a lead can be new, a lead can become an opportunity, lead can become a customer, and a lead can also be disqualified. So those are my four options inside this lookup table for lead status. I'm going to create my third and final table for disqualification reason. So this will be DQ reason. Once again, save my table. And let's call this TBL DQ lookup. And inside this table, let's list a few options. And if you disqualify a lead, perhaps you're disqualifying because it's unreachable. Maybe a disqualification reason could be due to budget. How about duplicate in the system? And also no interest, need that this customer has. So once you create all three of your tables, or depending on how many tables you need in your application, the next step is to go to Data Pages. And as I mentioned before, this object is going to allow you to build all of your forms, all of your reports, charts, calendars, depending on what you're trying to create for your application. And this is where we're going to get into now. When I click on New Data Page, this is going to launch Caspio's point-and-click data page wizard. And it's really, really easy to navigate this wizard. The first thing you'll see here are all the different types of applications that you can build. So if you need to build a submission form, you're going to select this option and then click Next until you finish building it. If you want to build a report that allows you to output the data, you're going to select from one of these layouts. A lot of our customers like to build a calendar data page because they want to be able to see all of their appointments on a calendar layout. So it's a very useful data page to be able to see all the appointments on a calendar. You can also develop charts for metrics and analytics. So if you want to see what your data really means in a visual representation, then it's always good to create a dashboard that has a lot of charts so that you can see trends, metrics, and analytics. And finally, if you're a little bit more technically adept, if you know how to code in HTML, you can build an HTML data page, and with that, you can build some more robust and sophisticated applications. But for now, we're going to focus on how to build a very basic submission form. We're going to hit Next, and using the very first dropdown, which is called Data Source, this is how you're going to link your table to your submission form. So if I want to capture information and store information in my leads table, this is going to become my data source. Let's give this data page a name. I'm going to call it Add New Lead. And inside your account, you're going to see a few preloaded styles that you can select from in order to match the look and feel of your website or your brand. I have a custom style here that I created called Master Style, so I'm going to choose that. Localization, as I mentioned before, allows you to change the language of the form. And here we have something called Access and Security. So this deals with password protection, how you can apply a login screen to your submission form to restrict access to only specific users in your application. We're not going to talk about this today, but we have plenty of articles and videos that show you how quickly and easily you can build a login screen and apply it using this checkbox. For now, we're going to bypass this and click Next. And then on this screen, now the wizard is asking me, what fields do you wish to use in the web form? You can select one field at a time, or you can move all of your fields to the right. And these are all the fields that exist in my lead table. When you click Next one more time, you're going to reach something, Configure its properties. On this screen, you can select each field on the left-hand side, and you can make modifications on the right side very quickly and very easily. If you want to see what the form looks like at this point, you can always click on the Preview button, and here's what the form looks like. It's a very basic form. We haven't really manipulated any of the fields. I am going to show you how to create drop-downs, radio buttons, so you'll see how that's done in a couple of minutes. But I do want to point out that when it comes to building forms in Caspio, you can build any kind of form that you want. So if you need a feedback form, order form, project form, inventory form, you can build those types of forms in Caspio. The first thing you'll need to do is create your tables with the necessary fields, and then you simply just build your form on top of the table so that you can store the data in that table. Now let's learn how we can make a few adjustments to our field. This is the fun part. So the lead status, you can see how I left it as a text field. And in my preview, it's a text field for lead status. How do I turn this into a drop-down? Where it says Form Element, just click on this and you'll see the option for drop-down. Now I could add my custom values in this window, but if you recall, we have a table that contains all of our statuses. So what I could do is very simply under Source drop-down, I can look up a table, and I can select my table that contains all the statuses. And for sort by, I would just like to sort my options how I have them in the table, so I'm going to select none. And with just a few clicks, when you click preview, you will see how I created that drop-down effect, and these options are accessible to me from the lookup table. Let's do the same thing for disqualification reason. So let's come down here to that field for DQ reason. Also select drop-down, lookup table, and select DQ lookup table that's coming from this object here. Preview once again, and you'll now see two drop-downs in your submission form. How about we make the name field a required field? Okay, so we're going to go back to the wizard, select the name field, and it's very simple to do this. All you need to do is check this box, click on preview, and now you will see how this field has become a required field, meaning that if I don't enter any data and try to submit my form, it's not going to happen because you have to enter some data. How about for this field, prefer contact method? Let's turn this into a radio button instead of a text field, because it doesn't make any sense for when we enter the lead to have to manually type in name or email. That's a very tedious process. So ideally what you want to do is select that field, and again, using this drop-down, you'll see the option for radio buttons. Use the custom values here if you'd like. Just add maybe phone, click on new to add a new option. How about email? And we'll just simply say no preference. Click preview, and you'll see those three radio button options. Let's move down to the comment field. Instead of seeing a field, I'd like to see a text area so that I can actually see what I'm typing. Back to the wizard, select the comments field, and using the form element dropdown, you'll see text area. Now here you can adjust the parameters. You can actually change the field width and height if you'd like. If I leave it as is and click preview, here's what my text area looks like. And then let's move down to the very last field here, date created. I could leave it exposed as a field and have the end user manually input the date if I want, depending on the nature of my business and what I'm doing. However, I can also select that field, and using the form element dropdown, I can just use timestamp. Now this field is going to be hidden, and when I preview the form, you will no longer see that field. It's still there behind the scenes, and every time you submit the form, it's automatically going to stamp the date and time of submission. It's just not visible to the end user. Now, if you're satisfied with the way this form looks, if you're happy with it and you want to make it available for your end users, all you need to do is click Finish to save your changes. And you have just created your very first submission form. You can click Edit to make further changes. You can preview the form once again, but next to Preview, we have something called Deploy. If you click on this link, the first thing you'll need to do is enable deployment status, and then Caspio is going to give you 5 different deployment options. The embed model is the most popular one that our customers use. All you need to do is copy this snippet of code, paste that code into your website builder, publish your website, and you're going to see that form embed into your site. It's exactly like embedding a YouTube video or a Facebook like button. Same concept. Copy, paste, embed. And for those of you who've never built a website in the past, if you don't have any technical expertise to build a website, you can also publish the data pages directly from Caspio using direct URL links. But building a website nowadays is very, very easy thanks to a handful of tools available to us, and I'm going to name a few: WordPress, GoDaddy, Weebly, Wix, Joomla. You can literally build a website in no more than 2 hours if you need something very basic with a navigation menu and a logo. And once you have the website and all the web pages created, then with Caspio, it's just plug and play. You build your data pages, you copy some code, and you paste the code into your site. And I'm going to show you how that's done. So let's close this screen. I have a sample website created that's empty. I don't have any content in any one of these tabs. And I'm going to show you how we can embed that form in this web page. Now, personally, I work directly inside the code because that is my background. I understand front-end development very well. But as I said before, if you use GoDaddy or if you use WordPress, they have a very simple drag and drop methodology where you can combine your content together. And once you find where you want to embed the form in that content, you're going to simply paste the Caspio code, save and publish your website, and when you refresh, you will see that form embedded in your page. It really, really is that simple. And now if a lot of people have access to this URL, they can simultaneously fill out this form, and upon submission, all of your data is going to be stored in your leads table, because the leads table is linked to this submission form. We built the form on top of that table. Now let's take a look at these forms side by side. Here's the form that I just embedded, and here's the form that's live on my website. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but this form has some conditional logic where I show and hide elements based on my selection, whereas this form doesn't have that applied yet. Let me show you how easy it is to do this in Caspio, to create this cool effect where you can show and hide elements. So let's edit the form once again. And let us navigate over to the properties screen once more. Okay, so we were just here a few minutes ago. What I'm going to need to do is insert using this button what we call new sections, because I'm trying to actually control just a specific field in my form. So if I add this section and I move it down above my deal size field, I only want this deal size field to belong to this section too. I also want the DQ reason to be its own section, so I'm going to add one more and one more above the name. Notice how this field now belongs to this section, and this field belongs to this section, and these fields belong to section 4. So I'm just sectioning things off in my form for now. Now here's why these sections are so powerful. Let's go to the Rules tab. This is where you're going to create that custom logic. Let's create our first rule by clicking on this plus icon, and rule number 1, let's set the criteria first by clicking on this new button. Let's have the condition be on field name. So if field name lead status, which is our dropdown, does not equal opportunity, and if it does not equal customer, I would like to hide section 2. And we know that section 2 has the deal size field. So once I click OK here, here's my very first rule. I'm going to click preview here, and you will see how I'm hiding that deal size field, that's section 2. But if I do select opportunity or customer, very easily I can show that field once again. Let's do the same thing for the DQ reason. So I'm going to create one more rule here. So if lead status does not equal disqualified, I'm going to go ahead and hide. If you guess section 3, you're correct, because section 3 contains the disqualification reason. So I'm going to select that and hit OK, hit preview, and now both of those fields are going to be hidden. If I select opportunity, there's my deal size. If I select disqualified, here's my DQ reason. Now I have two additional rules created here, because if I select disqualified or opportunity, I want to make sure that this field is also required, because I don't want somebody to accidentally submit this form and not give me the opportunity amount. So I want to make sure that they actually add the opportunity amount for deal size. So we're going to set up a third rule. And in this rule, we want to say if the lead status equals to opportunity, or if it equals to customer, I would like to require the deal size field. So let's set up the fourth rule now very quickly. So we'll do the same thing with the disqualified. So if lead status equals to disqualified, I would like to require the DQ reason field and click OK. Now I could click preview just to see it once again, but I'm just going to hit finish for now and save my changes. What I want to point out here is that once you paste that code once into your website, you never have to paste it again. All you need to do is simply just refresh your website, and you will see all of those changes applied to your form. So now when I select opportunity, you can see how the deal size field is a required field. If I select customer, same thing. And conversely, if I select disqualified, you will see how I can select my DQ reason as my options, and it's also a required field. So hopefully you're thinking in your head, you know, this is actually pretty cool. Maybe I can build a survey for my website or for our customers to be able to provide some feedback. You know, typically when you build a survey form, you'll see a question that requires a yes or no answer. And if the end user selects yes on the radio button, let me open up a field below to ask them why they selected yes. If they selected no, I want to hide that text area below. Okay, and as I mentioned, I just want to reinforce this one more time. You can build any kind of form you want in Caspio, but by adding these dynamic conditional logics, you can actually create some really cool dynamic effects for the end users. And this is how quickly and easily you can build a form in Caspio. It literally takes just a couple of minutes. Once you get the hang of the data page wizard, you can build a form very, very quickly. Now that we know how to build a form, let's learn how to build a report to be able to output the data. And the report that I'm going to show you how to build, if I go to search here, has the ability to search based on some criteria. And when I click search, I can see the results from the table along with a chart. And we can also drill into details if we wanted to see and drill down on that lead's detailed information. So let's go back inside Caspio. Now that we have our submission form created, let's build a new data page. And this time, I'm not adding any data to my table. I want to output the data using the report. And I'm going to select this data page type, which is a combination of a chart and results underneath the chart. And if you look at the illustration below, this is basically what you're creating. You're going to have a search interface, you're going to have a results page, and you can drill into details. Let's click Next. And let's select our data source, just like in the submission form. What table do I want to output the data from? I'm going to select my leads table because that's where all my lead information is captured. I'm going to call this Search Leads, and I'm going to select my same style and click Next. Now the wizard is asking me, do you need an interactive search form? I'm going to select my first radio button because I would like to have a search form. Just like in this example here, you can see that on my website I have a search form. So let's hit Next. And now let's select the fields that we would like to have in our search form. So I would like to search based on lead status, name, title, phone, and email. 5 fields, but you can include as many as you want. On the following screen, much like the submission form, you can select all of your search fields on the left-hand side, and you can make modifications on the right. So for lead status, if I want to do something like this, where I can select my leads from the table, I'm not going to have that set to text field. I'm going to change that to a dropdown. And instead of just having lookup table, which I can do if I want to, I'm going to actually select both custom values and lookup table, because under custom values, I want to be able to search any status. Just make sure you delete the value because you're not really searching for that. This is going to give you a broader results range. So as you click search, it's going to return all the records from the table. And then finally, lookup table, I can select my status lookup, and I don't want to sort based on display. Let's leave it as none. For the rest of my fields, just to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to set the comparison type to contains, because if you leave it as contains, if you type in a letter in the field and click search, it's going to return all the results that contain that letter. So let's do the same thing for the rest of our fields really quickly here. And then let's move on to the next screen. Now it's asking me, what fields do you wish to use in the results page? What this means, once you click search, what columns do you want to display on the results page? So let's have lead status, name, title, phone, and email. Very simple. Click next once again. And on this screen, the wizard is asking you, do you want the end users to have the ability to edit data on the results page? And you can check these if you'd like. I'm going to keep them unchecked. But what it means, if you select one of these options, your end users will have the ability right here on the results page to be able to change the title of that lead if you want them to. But for now, we're going to keep it as read only. This is my results page fields. I can configure this page as well. Here's my lead status field. I want to be able to group my leads based on the lead status, and I want to have this be a collapsible group and expanded by default. If you set this up this way, it's going to come out looking something like this. You're grouping all of your leads based on the status, and you can collapse or expand each one of these sections. On the next screen, let's go ahead and display 25 records per page. I'm not going to make any additional changes to my options here. I'm just going to click Next. And this is where you get to choose what kind of chart you would like to build for the results page. I'd like to build a very simple pie chart that shows me a distribution of all of my leads per status. So I want to be able to see all of my new leads, opportunities, customers, and disqualified. And on the next screen, let's add our title for the chart. We'll say leads by status. My category is going to be lead status. And for the value, all I'm trying to do here is simply just count the names in my table. And I want to show the value as percentage. We're going to hit Next. I'm not going to make any changes to my chart, the way the data is displayed. And for right now, we're going to disable the details page. At this point, you can click Finish or Preview to see your report. I'm going to click Finish to save my changes. And just like the submission form, I'm going to click Deploy, Enable Access, grab my embed code, go to a different web page on my website. I created a page called Search, and I'm going to paste my Caspio code. I'm going to save my changes, go back to my website, and when I go back to my Search tab, there is my interface to be able to search my data. We have this cool option for Search Any, or I can narrow down to a specific status. But if I leave it as Search Any and click Search, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get no records found. Why is that? Well, because in my table of leads that we created, we currently don't have any data inside that table. That's why the report is empty. But if I go back to my submission form, and let's say we add a new lead, how about we add a customer here, and we'll say deal size 50,000 or 50,000. We'll add a name here, Sally Smith, title maybe CEO, and we'll click Submit. Hey, you have your very first submission via the form. When you refresh the leads table now, you will see that in the database. But also when you go back to the search form, because the report is outputting the data from the leads table, and you click Search, you're going to see that record now. And you can see how the data populates. Now, this doesn't look very exciting. When you look at this report, we only have one lead in the table. But just imagine if you had more leads in the table. You will see how this pie chart is affected, and you're going to be able to see more information in the report. So I'm going to show you how we can import data from Excel into our Caspio account. So here's a table that contains a lot of my leads, and these leads currently are offline. I want to bring this to my Caspio account. All you're going to need to do is go to Tools, click on Import, locate that file that you have. I called it Webinar Leads. It's a workbook file, Excel file. Click Next. Hit Next one more time. And then it's going to take me through the Import Wizard. And it's very simple here. First thing I'll need to do is specify to what application do I want to import this Excel file to. So I'm going to select the application that we started developing. Here's my table, and under the action column, you have a couple of different actions here that you can select from. Since I only want to append those leads to my existing table, I can select the append action, and I'm going to select my table of leads. And if I leave this option, all of these records that you see in the Excel file will append or attach to my table in Caspio. We're going to hit Next. Once you map out your fields from the table that you're importing with the table that you have in your account, click on Import. It should only take a second here because we only have, I believe, 36 or 37 entries. Okay, once the data is imported successfully, close the screen. Let's go to our table for fun, and let's open up that table of leads. Now you get to see that same data in an online environment, in an online database. And all I did was just append that data to my existing table. Now what's really awesome is when you go back to the report and click Search, you're going to be able to see all that data populate in your report, and you can see how it affects the chart. So in black, we have all of our new leads, 50%. Red is all of our opportunities. Blue is all of our customers. And green is all of our disqualified leads. Now, the color pattern doesn't really match well with the status, but you can change the color palette to something else if you'd like green to become a new lead or opportunity if you'd like. All right. So with just a few clicks, a couple of minutes, I was able to develop a very simple submission form, a very simple report to input data and to output data. Okay, so hopefully you can see these are the building blocks of Caspio for building forms and building reports. Once you get the hang of this, you can literally build both of these data pages in 2 minutes or less. And how you want to display data. Where it gets a lot more fun and interesting is once you start password protecting these data pages and enabling user level permissions in your application. So if you only want specific employees to have the ability to read the data, you can enable that in Caspio. Or if you want these specific employees to just edit the data, you can do that as well. So you can set privileges and user level permissions to what your application users can do inside the app. It's a very, very powerful thing to do in Caspio. Okay, we don't have time to show you that today, but you can actually enable something like that in your workflows. Now, the last thing that I want to show you in today's webinar, which is a very awesome feature, is called triggered actions. Triggers in the database allow you to manipulate data in your table or across multiple tables. Just to give you an example, let's say you're building an inventory application and you have a table that contains your products on hand. And when you submit an invoice, you want to subtract the number of products that you have on hand to get the total. So you can do calculation-based triggers. In today's webinar, I'm going to show you a very simple trigger by going to tables, clicking on design from my leads table. And what I would like to do is calculate the commission. And I'm going to set the data type to currency here. What I want to do is tell the system, when I add a lead, I want to calculate the commission only if the lead status equals to customer. Because a customer now has paid the money and I want to pay out my sales rep the commission, but only when the lead status equals to customer. I'm going to save my table, go to data sheet, and you'll see how I just added this field called commission. And we will calculate the commission only when the status changes to customer. To create a trigger, you go to this tab here, and you're very simply going to click on this link, New Triggered Action. This is going to open up Caspio's visual builder to creating triggers, and this is a drag and drop interface versus what you saw earlier with the data page wizard where we had point and click. This is the original anchor. You can never move this, okay? And you can fire a trigger on 3 different events. You can fire a trigger on insert of data to a table, update, and delete. To the left, you will find these functions. When you click on each function, you're going to see objects that you can select, drag onto the canvas, and when you see the orange indicator, let go, and you can see how that snaps in place, kind of like Lego pieces. Now you can right-click on this object to delete it, or you can hover over the trash can and let go, and then you can start over. So now to create this trigger, I'm going to need to use an action called update because I'm trying to update the commission in the leads table. Drag that over, snap it in place. And I'm not updating any other table here. What I'm trying to do is based on the data that's inserted into the table, I want to fire insert and update events. So as I insert the data into the leads table, I want to update the commission. Now, what field do we want to set this trigger on? Well, we said we want to calculate the commission, so we're going to select this field here. And in order for me to calculate the commission, I have to add an equation. And the equations are all found under the number function. Drag over this widget, snap it in place. And in order for me to pull the field from the table, I'm going to go to the data function and grab the field widget. Put that in here and grab my field deal size. I'm going to change the attribute to times, and depending on how you want to pay out your sales reps, I'm going to give them a 10% commission, 0.10. I also need to set my where clause because we said only calculate the commission when lead equals to customer. So lead status equal to customer. So let me walk you through this workflow one more time. When you insert a lead into this table, when you submit that form, I want to insert and update the commission, and I want to calculate that commission deal size here. Make sure you select deal size times 10% only when the lead equals to customer. Save your changes. Let's give it a name, update commission. Save and enable. And let's go to data sheet mode now so that you can see how this works. So if I change, let's say, this is an opportunity, 15,000, 10% on that should be 1,500. So if I change this to customer manually directly inside the table and click on the second row here, you will see how we calculate the commission. But if you're doing that via the web, let's say you add a new lead here, and we're going to flag that as a customer so we can calculate the commission on, let's say, 100,000. Bob Jones, click on submit. This should calculate in my table as 10,000 because of 10%. So if I hit submit, refresh my leads table. Let's go all the way down to see Bob's information. There's Bob Jones. Here's customer 100,000, and you can see how we calculated the commission. And you can call this field anything you want. You can call it sales rep commission. You can call it commission. It's completely up to you. So the triggers are very, very powerful in Caspio. I definitely recommend that you learn how to do that, because not only can you do something as simple as this, but imagine if you had two tables and you change something in one table, you can copy over those changes into a second table simultaneously at the same time. This allows you to keep track of your historical changes if you're doing like an audit trail and you want to be able to see who's making the changes, when, and what changes are made. Very, very simple workflow, but yet it has a lot of power, so you can keep a historical trail of all of the changes on an account, on a sale, or anything else in the database. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude today's webinar at that. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Honestly, I've only shown you the tip of the iceberg, what you can do in Caspio. It's a very powerful platform. The best way to learn how to use the Caspio platform, I'm just going to point this out really quickly. If you go to our home page and you go under customers, click on live training. I host these training sessions on a weekly basis. They're always available every single week. And if you want to learn how to use Caspio, they're completely free. You don't have to pay for anything. You can even ask me questions along the way. I will teach you the basic topics behind Caspio. You will learn intermediate concepts and also advanced concepts. So if you're interested in learning how to create relationships, you can attend the intermediate and advanced class. If you want to learn how to import data, you can attend the basic session. We have a lot of people coming to these training sessions, and you can come back as many times as you want to. Okay, there's no limit. And this is the best way to learn. So I really hope that I will quote unquote see you there after today's webinar, and I'm hoping that you will be able to also set up a 14-day trial and start building your own applications, either for your department or perhaps you have an immediate need for something. You can even talk to our team to get a consultation going. Well, that's all the time that we have for today's webinar. Once again, thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate you sticking around. It was a pleasure giving you this webinar. Hopefully you were able to learn something, and hopefully you'll be able to now set up your trial account and start developing these applications, and hopefully you will quote unquote see you in my training sessions. If you do attend my training sessions, say hi, tell me that you attended my webinar. Would love to see people come to my training class so that you can learn how to use the platform. Again, thank you so much. Have a great day and a good evening depending on where you're at, and I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar now. And if you end up having any questions for us, just contact us directly. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.